Israel has launched a military operation in the West Bank, and the U.S. has lifted all weapons restrictions on Israel. Is it true that U.S. troops are leaving Syria? Why did Trump raise the duty on Colombia? And how did the new Syrian government screw Russia for $500 million? This is Ilya Brizak. Let's discuss this. Trump imposed 25% duties on all goods from Colombia and sanctions against Bogotá for refusing to accept 2 airplanes with deported illegal migrants. He banned entry to the U.S. for Colombian officials and ordered increased border controls for Colombian citizens and called it just the beginning. Experts believe this is a showboating for Denmark and Canada. Half an hour after Trump announced sanctions against Colombia, Colombian President Gustavo Petro announced that he would send a presidential plane to pick up Colombian nationals to be deported from the U.S., to which Trump ordered the closure of the U.S. Embassy in Bogotá and increased duties on all goods from Colombia from 25% to 50% from next week until they take Colombian illegal migrants back to their homes. We'll see how events unfold in a week's time. A few days ago, the IDF announced a military operation in Jenin and asked the PA to withdraw its forces from the camp. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said that Israel's army, police, and security services have launched a broad and significant operation to defeat terrorism in the West Bank. Quote, "We are acting systematically and decisively against the Iranian axis wherever it extends its tentacles, in Gaza, Lebanon, Syria, Yemen, Judea and Samaria." End quote. The Prime Minister's statement also said that the operation was an additional step in achieving the goal of strengthening Israel's security. According to a senior Israeli security official, the large-scale campaign in northern Samaria could take months, and when it is over, the terrorist camps will cease to exist. He said what Israel did in Gaza will be done in Jenin as well. Quote, "We will leave them in ruins," end quote. The special military operation was called the Iron Wall. Jenin Governor Kamal Abu al-Rub told the AFP news agency that what is happening is an invasion. It happened quickly. Israeli helicopters are in the sky and military vehicles are everywhere. Palestinian media reported that Israeli military vehicles invaded Jenin and its refugee camp Tuesday morning after several drone strikes. And it came after a weeks-long operation by Palestinian security forces against armed groups including Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad, which they see as a challenge to their authority. Hamas and its allied factions, in turn, have issued calls for a resistance response. Subscribe to my channel right now. I tell you about the latest news from around the world. Nevertheless, experts say that this is merely routine and has been going on for decades, that similar operations have been carried out before, and once this one is over, others will follow. And this will happen as long as the Ayatollah regime exists, which arms, sponsors, and supports terrorist groups. But worst of all, the strikes on Jenin are taking place right now, in these minutes as you watch the release. Power is out in large parts of the city. The head of Hamas in the West Bank, Zahir Jabrin, said our people have an iron will to sacrifice themselves and have no choice but to revolt the way they did in Gaza. Meanwhile, Egyptian media is reporting that hundreds of truckloads of humanitarian aid and gasoline trucks are entering the Gaza Strip every day from several crossings. And the deal to swap hostages for Palestinian prisoners is so far going through as agreed, except for 2 Palestinians who asked to stay in an Israeli prison because they didn't want to be taken back to the Gaza Strip. However, the source says that one of them was persuaded by the Israeli prison service, while the other one insisted and remained in prison. The other one was released instead. Also caught on camera was a situation in which Gazans came close to the Netzera axis, as a result of which the Israeli army forces opened fire on people. There are no reports of casualties. In turn, the beginning of the IDF special operation in the West Bank, Donald Trump expressed his full support. First, Trump said he is not sure the Gaza ceasefire agreement will be fully implemented. Quote, "I'm not sure. This is not our war. It's their war. I've seen the footage from Gaza. Everything is destroyed there. It has to be rebuilt, but otherwise, it can't be run by those who ran it. They are the villains," end quote. It's worth recalling that the Trump administration has already noted that Hamas will not remain in charge of the Gaza Strip, and Israel still has leeway in case Hamas violates its commitments. And that's the reason why the Israeli military is still in Lebanon and likely won't leave, because every time either Hamas or Hezbollah violates the agreements, at least according to the Israelis. Unfortunately, we will find out how it really was much later. Meanwhile, Hamas Politburo member Mohammed Nazal said that the movement does not want to rule Gaza and plans to hand over power to an independent, competent government capable of managing the services, health, and civil affairs sectors. Second, Trump decided to lift all remaining restrictions on arms transfers from the U.S., including the supply of 900-kilogram heavy bombs. The 1,800 Mag-84 bombs stored in the U.S. will be transferred to Israel in the coming days. Likewise, Likewise, Trump lifted sanctions against far-right Israeli settlement groups and individuals accused of involvement in violence against Palestinians in the West Bank. According to experts, this will allow Israel to resume the war with great vigor. Regarding the situation of Gaza residents, Trump said he is interested in Egypt, Jordan, and other Arab countries accepting Gazans to clean up the destruction in the territory. Trump wants Egypt to take in 1.5 million people, and for Jordan to take in even more than it does now, including for permanent residency. Experts are confident that the countries will not agree to this. Meanwhile, according to Turkish sources, U.S. troops have begun to leave Hasaka province, which have been in northern Syria for 9 years. According to their reports, the U.S. military, with the help of trucks, taking armored vehicles and heavy weapons to bases in Iraq. And what do you think about it? Write in the comments. Some experts link this to a recent statement by the new Syrian leader, Mohammed al-Julani, to The Economist. He said the country would not allow armed groups that threaten Turkey, including the politico-military organization PKK, to have a presence on its territory, and emphasized that all foreign terrorists must leave Syria. Al-Julani added that unlike other armed groups, the PKK refused to lay down its arms and did not agree to submit to the Syrian Defense Ministry. Therefore, we can conclude that the U.S. and the new Syrian government have certain agreements that directly affect the Kurdish issue. But at the same time, Julani refused Turkey's offer to train and equip the new Syrian army, citing that another Middle Eastern country made a more attractive offer, and added that Syrians are grateful to Turkey, but they should not put themselves on the same front with it. Meanwhile, Julani told Syrian media that he will soon go on his first foreign tour, and it will be either Turkey or Saudi Arabia, which in many ways will determine the new course of Syrian politics. A very difficult choice for Julani, if there is one. But it is noteworthy that Saudi Arabia has announced that it will invest as much as $600 billion in the United States. This was reported by the Saudi press agency following a phone call between Saudi Prince Mohammed bin Salman and President Trump. During the conversation, they also discussed strengthening bilateral cooperation in the fight against terrorism. And it's now clear that the Saudi prince's statement is already prearranged with Trump. Everything has already been decided. We just have to wait to see where Julani flies to. Then we will see the beneficiaries of regime change in Syria. And in the meantime, the new Syrian authorities have officially canceled the investment agreement with the Russian company Stroytransgaz. Citing a statement by the director of Tartus Customs, the Syrian newspaper Al Watan writes that all revenues from the port's activities are now directed to the benefit of the Syrian state, and the workers employed in the port of Tartus will return to the management of the Syrian side. Earlier, Russia leased the Syrian port for 49 years, and in exchange invested in its development $500 million. At the moment, it is not clear how much money Russia has already managed to invest in infrastructure. Nevertheless, the head of Tartus Customs accused the Russians of failing to modernize the port mechanisms. Nevertheless, the Syrian authorities are discussing with Russia the presence of the Russian military contingent in Maymim and Tartus. This was reported by the defense minister of Syria's transitional government. According to the bilateral treaty, Russia can use bases on the territory of Syria until 2066. But after the overthrow of the Assad regime, the terms of Russia's presence will be changed. According to the source, the parties have almost agreed on the terms of the new agreement. That's all the important news for today. Stay tuned. Write in the comments what you think about it. Boosty and Patreon for those who want to support the channel. See ya.